I was thinking of saying no to this event. I have written 2 books about how to say no, and still I ended up saying yes to this event. I mean, how hard can it be to say no? I've been sleepless for the last 3 months because I'm terrified of doing this speech. Inside, I feel sick with anxiety, and I'm sorry, you guys in the front, if I will fall here in front of you. Actually, me showing up here means I'm saying no to my fears. All of us have these thoughts. I am nobody. What will other people think of me? I have nothing important to say. So I said no to these useless thoughts because I do have an important message for you. Maybe this speech will give one of you an extra push to say no to what's holding you back and start making a change. I will tell you the story of how I learned to say no and dared to become the woman I am today. Are you ready? It was winter and early in the morning when I opened the door at my house. It was dark and cold. It must have been less than -20 degrees. The weather was so frosty it was hard to even breathe. Then I saw a stranger in my garden and I got scared. What in the world? There, just in front of me, stood a young man in a hood, looking dark and scary, staring at his mobile phone. I got so scared I had no idea what to say to him, but to ask, "What are you doing here in my garden?" "I just walked through your garden on my way to school," he replied. "Okay," I thought, and said nothing. I was shivering when I got into my car, and I said to myself, I don't want that youngster walking here, but I don't even have the courage to say my thoughts to a teenager. Even my voice was weak and quiet. How will I ever manage to be a successful entrepreneur? I do have a confession to make. I used to be a people pleaser. Both in my work life and personal life, I constantly had a feeling inside of me that I just wanted to scream out, "No!" but ended up saying, "Yes, I can take care of that." I remembered my therapist once said, "I lack boundaries and I have to learn to say no." I started to wonder how I could change. I should warn you, after people have been listening to me and my story about how to say no, they have ended up changing their jobs, becoming entrepreneurs, or getting divorced. So take a good look at your life as it is now and imagine what it will be after huge changes. Firstly, learning to say no can build your self-confidence. Having spoken with a lot of Finnish people about how to say no, it seems like we have this mentality of who am I to say anything to anyone. Actually, the most common phrase in Finland is, "You don't have to bother and make me coffee. I am nobody." And you know how Finnish people love coffee. Being a people pleaser, I had stress about not being enough, about being worse than everyone else. As a child, I was different from everyone as I was born with a cleft lip and cleft palate. And I was also a Finn in Sweden and later on a Swede in Finland. I grew up being a nice girl who never wanted to cause any trouble to anyone. The more I was invisible, the better. So I know a lot about not believing in myself, as I thought of that way for over 30 years, and still do sometimes. As being a people pleaser, I always tried to make everyone else happy, but I always ended up doing tasks for others. At that point in my life, I was also in a relationship where the man in my life never listened to my needs and wishes. I was so insecure, I would let anybody walk all over me. Needless to say, I wasn't happy. It's hard to say no because we don't want to hurt other people, but instead we may end up hurting ourselves. What I learned during the times I was in a bad relationship and also had a burnout at work was that I need to set boundaries, and I started to learn it in small steps. The more I had the courage to say no, the more self-confident I became. Then finally, I said no to the man who treated me badly. I said no to a difficult colleague, and I said no to my own insecurity. So we have to build your self-confidence so that you can say no when needed. Then you have to find out what you want to say no to. When I was aged 25 to 30, I was married, and my husband and I tried to have children. We went through infertility treatments, and at the same time, our marriage died. You can believe that any intimacy had died. I had always thought of myself as a young mother with 2 kids. At the point where I had more than 20 failures of the infertility treatments, I felt quite lost. Who am I? And what can I wish in life if I don't become a mom? I had lost everything I believed in during the treatments, and I had to find out what I really needed to become happy again. So I started to say no to the expectations that other people and the society have from us, and I figured out what kind of life I want to have. After the divorce, I decided to stop complaining, and I decided to start enjoying the windy weather we have in Oulu. And I started to kite surf and began to live my life more freely. I made a huge life change after realizing I can choose the life I get. Spending time on worrying what other people might think of us and what they expect from us is just a waste of time. You are the only one who knows what you want to say no to. It's actually easy to say no when you know what you want. The third step is to say no to distractions. Every 4th pin has experienced burnout, and one reason is that we cannot separate work and free time. We say yes too often and have too many distractions. I work as an entrepreneur, and a couple of years ago I wrote 3 books in 1.5 years. At the same time, I was a full-time entrepreneur. I studied, I renovated a house, I met the man of my dreams, I spent time on holidays and with family, I exercised, kite surfed. To be able to do all this, I said no a lot. No to phone calls, no to social media, no to news, no to everything that's not important for me. No to many invitations and people. Sorry, I never called you back. Steve Jobs said that focusing is about saying no to almost everything. He said you got to say no, 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 and when you say no, you piss off people. Now, have you ever looked at a garden someone is taking really good care of? The garden is neat, it has clear places for every plant to grow. If there are some plants that are not supposed to be there, even though they might be pretty, the gardener tears them out so that there will be space for the ones the gardener wants to grow and flourish. It's the same in our lives. Sometimes really good things can steal resources from the great things. Just because we cannot focus, our lives might be filled with good or bad things, and we don't have room for the great things. So focusing is about saying no to distractions. Then finally, learn to say no to other people. Have you heard yourself say yes in different situations? Like you think in your head, no way I will do that. And then suddenly you hear yourself replying, yes, I can take care of that. To stop being a people pleaser, you have to change. Change is hard for us, as we are afraid of the unknown. But oh my, what if you end up happy? For me, the first time I said no in a bigger way was when I was working as a marketing manager. I had just learned how to kite surf, and for the first time in my life, I felt really happy. Around that time, I was sitting in my office, and the flag outside the office window was swinging in the wind. Just by looking at the swinging flag, I knew it. 10 meters per second, just the right angle, the perfect day for kitesurfing. I knew I could do my work also later on, so I went to ask my boss if I could go home and do the work in the evening instead. No, she said. Then I started to think about life. Do I really want to sit by a computer all day and have life just drain away as I drink coffee in order to be able to function? It was summer and I got a really strong feeling. I will not spend another minute at that boring workplace. And I started to plan my own company and my way to a life with freedom. Once again, though, I went to ask my boss if I could get flexible working hours so I could go kitesurfing if it was windy and do the work when there was no wind. No, she said. That day, I resigned from my job and started as a full-time entrepreneur. Ooh. Do you still remember that boy I talked about in the beginning of my speech? First, I was a bit scared. But then I gathered my Finnish sisu, and I decided to say no. Sisu means something like guts. It was still winter, but the coldest days had turned into slightly warmer days, and the sun was shining again. It had snowed a lot that winter. I dug myself through the snow to my neighbor's door and knocked. The boy's parents opened the door, and the dad looked like he might be a member of some sort of a gang, big and scary. I said to him, "Do you know your son walks through my garden every day, and now there's a path there? That's not okay. If he wishes to use my garden as a road, he can do so if he does the snow work daily for me." I smiled every morning when I saw the young boy walking to the bus station using the public roads. He often stood there, waiting for the bus with his shoulders hanging down as he was staring at his mobile phone. Typical millennial, but at least he was able to say no to snow work. At this moment, I knew I had changed. I had built boundaries and I had learned to say no. So now it's your turn to think of the one thing that you need to say no to. What is the one thing or the one person that is holding you back and is stopping you from making a change? Little did I know that saying no to my fear of public speaking would actually be this awesome. Thank you.